My name's David Hallett. I run a flexible workspace consultancy here in London called WORKINLDN. So I specialise in helping businesses find the perfect flexible workspace solution for them, whether that's an individual looking for a co-working or hot desking membership, or an SME looking for a private 10, 20, 30 person office within a larger shared flexible workspace building, to larger corporate and enterprise occupiers who are looking for the identity and control over their space that they would get from a conventional lease, i.e. a self-contained floor branded to their needs, but delivered on more flexible terms with a sort of a service element included. The benefits from using these spaces differ really depending on what you're looking for, but they cater for all tastes. So if you're a freelancer, for example, the basics, but also the lifeblood of any business would be reliable internet that doesn't cut out, and if it does cut out, there's a team on site that can get it fixed like that. Symmetrical upload-download speeds as well, especially if you're in media or content production. Most home broadband may be super fast download, but very slow upload, so if you're trying to upload stuff to WeTransfer or whatever. And excellent coffee as well, which is obviously the lifeblood of most creative businesses, but also an aesthetic that beats the home. A lot of these places have incredibly considered design, comfortable furniture, just a nice environment to work in, a big attention, a big focus put on biophilic design in the workplace as well, which for those that don't know is biophilia is a school of thought in the scientific community that human beings, in order to maximise our mental and physical well-being, we need to have a physical connection to nature. The most effective way to do that, if you're going to be inside a building, is with lots and lots of plants, and they have to be live plants. If they're plastic, you're cheating. So biophilic design, comfortable furniture, but also other people as well. I mean, the great thing about these co-working spaces is if you like, you can come in and just hunker down and focus. But there's also a group of people that are open for networking and having a chat as and when you need to. A lot of these places are also run by excellent team members as well, who are there not just to make sure that the building doesn't fall down, but to look after you from a service perspective. So think of it as like a Hoxton Hotel lobby vibe. If you're a small to medium enterprise, then taking a private office within one of these places adds a huge benefit to your business culture. A lot of small businesses trying to get off the ground, I know I've been one myself, don't have the resources or the focus to be able to create that kind of environment for their teams. So the best solution to that is to outsource it to an organisation who specialise in that kind of hospitality in the workplace, and they do it all for you. So you can promise an excellent working environment for team members, new and old, for retaining talent and attracting the best new talent as well. So in summary, the benefits of these places are to deliver a physical working environment, or take one that is ready-made, a sense of community if you need it, or space to focus if you don't want it, great coffee, flexibility, and the best part is that some of these places are dog friendly, so if you don't want to leave your dog at home, then they'd be most welcome as well. The best way, the easiest and most effective way to find a perfect flexible workspace is to go through a consultant like me. So from personal experience, I spent nearly 10 years working for various flexible workspace operators in London, selling their space. Everything from sort of field sales, business development, up to sales director level. When it comes to pricing and negotiation, finding out what's possible to get you the best terms available, I used to do that for a living, so I know the tricks, if you like. But also, most importantly, especially the London flexible workspace market, it is huge these days. There used to be a handful of go-to players back in the days when these things were called serviced offices. Then WeWork came along and changed everything. They turned these places into a sort of a bland utility and turned them into sort of a lifestyle brand and hospitality experience. Following WeWork and their early success, a lot of institutional investment flooded into the market. So over the last few years, there's been a huge new wave of very cool, very different, very unique flexible workspace operators, all offering the same sort of thing at its bare bones, but with a sort of a different slant, different focus. But the market is very fragmented, and it can take a very long time to find out who's who, get in touch with them, explain to them your requirement, get the best available options, get a tour booked in to see them, and of course you never know whether you've missed something out that might have been absolutely perfect. So going through an organisation like WORKINLDN, we know the market, we have relationships with all of those operators. We can listen to what you're looking for. We can tailor a shortlist to make sure that we're only showing you the most relevant options. We will book tours for you, come out with you if you wish. Once you've found the space which is perfect for you, we will then negotiate the best available arrangement for you on commercial terms, and even talk you through the contractual elements of it as well. When it comes to contractual terms with flexible workspaces, they are pretty much uniform, bar slightly different wording, and those terms and conditions have existed for about 20 years. There is an organisation in this industry which used to be called the BCA, or Business Centre Association. They rebranded as Flexa a couple of years ago, the Flexible Space Association, but it's the same sort of thing. It's a sort of semi-governing body for the industry to which most operators adhere. So a fairly standard set of terms and conditions. There are a couple of things to look out for. One of them would be the renewal terms. There are some operators out there that have what's called an auto-renewal clause in there, which basically means that most of these agreements, let's say you take something for 12 months, they have a 3-month notice period as standard. So usually an operator, when you come up against about 4 months before the end of your term, they will, if they're proactive, they will reach out to you and start talking about your experience there and whether you want to stay, so that a new agreement can be struck before that notice period is breached. There is usually an annual increase year on year, and that's more to do with the sort of financial realities of running one of these businesses. The operational cost of these operations goes up year on year, utilities, business rates, staff salaries and so on. So that is to be expected, but really when it comes to renewal, it's about getting that increase as low as possible. But on auto-renewal, there are some providers that will simply sit back, and if they don't hear from you, your term will renew for another period at whatever the current market rate is. So it's important not to get stung by that. So for example, if you come to me and I find you a space for 12 months and we get you a super deal on that for the first 12 months, when it comes to year 2, that operator is going to want to try and get that price back up to where it should have been, or thereabouts. On an auto-renewal clause, if you don't say anything, then it may also renew for another 12 months at the market rate. So it's worth, whenever you sign an agreement, making a mental note of when the agreement ends, when the notice period starts, and about a month before that, stick a note in your calendar to either breach the conversation with your operator and start having that conversation with them, or reach out to me and I can talk you through it. Another thing to be aware of, which especially for businesses that are coming out of a conventional leasehold space where they have what's called security of tenure over their space, it means that they have a sort of a legal right to it under something called the Landlords and Tenants Act. It basically means that you have full right to that space. It is your demise. In a serviced office, whether it is a whole floor or a 10-person office within a shared floor, there is usually a clause as standard in these terms and conditions, which is charmingly known as the lift and shift clause. Basically what it does is give the landlord or the operator the right, if they need to, within reason, to move you to another space, usually around terms that it has to be similar or better or the same size or so on. A lot of businesses, especially those that are used to having security of tenure under the Landlord and Tenants Act, for them that seems very risky. On that, first of all, it is a legal requirement, so that these spaces are licensed out under license agreements, not tenancy agreements. And it's a key legal distinction between a tenancy and a license agreement to have that clause in there that you don't have full security of tenure. It's nothing to be alarmed about, but that is one of the reasons why it's one of the things that gives the operator the ability to deliver you that space on flexible terms. It's also one of the things that allows you to expand or contract into other space during your term as well, so there is a material benefit to you, the client. There are some horror stories out there of operators using it, enacting that whenever they see fit. So if you're in a 10-person office and they have a 20-person office vacant next door, and they have a client that comes along and they want to take a 30-person office, the more wily operators might think, right, well, we'll just move them into the basement and then we can free up this whole space for the larger client. The operators that do that are few and far between. It's quite a short-sighted way to run a business. But where it is necessary to make a commercial decision on that basis, most of them will make sure that you are happy, i.e. they will either put you in bigger or better space for the same price, or they will make sure that it is at least the equivalent. But also it's there from a practical point of view. So for example, if you were in a conventional leasehold space where you had security of tenure, if there was a leak from the floor above that was damaging your space, it becomes very bureaucratically complicated to be able for the landlord to get access to fix it and to give you alternative suitable working environments. So if you're in a flexible workspace and there is a leak, for example, that operator may need to put you in a temporary office until they can get in there and fix it. Having that clause in there enables them to do that without anyone breaching contract. So it is a standard feature of 99.9% of flexible workspace contracts, nothing to be alarmed about. It is standard and it is rarely enacted without good cause. A couple of other practical things to think about, which aren't necessarily terms and conditions related, is that not all buildings are pet friendly. A lot are these days, but if you do have a dog or a pet that you'd like to bring to the office, it's always worth clarifying and getting it in writing from the operator first. The reason being is that most of these operators, they have a superior landlord, so they don't own the buildings. Some do, but most don't. So they will rent it from a superior landlord. And in the terms of their lease, it might be that pets are prohibited. So an eager salesperson who's perhaps new and doesn't know any better might say, yeah, absolutely, that's fine, sign here on the line, only to find out once you've committed that actually you can't bring your pet to the office. So it's worth checking, never assume that it's possible, and if they say yes, make sure you get it in writing as well. Another thing that is always best to not take for granted is that not all spaces, as ridiculous as this sounds in 2020, have self-controlled air conditioning. So it's something worth checking. Most buildings have fresh airflow or mechanical airflow or air conditioning in their buildings, but some of them are controlled centrally, which means that someone on their facilities team or in their management office has control over the temperature of your office. Sometimes it's a single temperature for the entire floor. Sometimes it is zoned, so your office can have a temperature, but it does mean that whenever it gets a bit too hot or too cold, you've got to email them or get in touch with them, go out to the office and ask them to do it, and it doesn't happen instantaneously. So if that kind of thing is important to you, or you're one of those businesses or offices that have a constant battle over who's too hot and who's too cold, it's always worth checking to see if there A, is air conditioning and heating, and B, if it is self-controlled by you, the tenant. I think I'd be very surprised if things got back to business as usual. I think that now that businesses and individuals within those businesses have been given a taste of what working from home can be like, it's going to be very hard to let that go. But I think ultimately, having spent the last few years reading headlines about the death of the office and so on, I don't think that's true at all. I think ultimately the net result of this is that most businesses, hopefully happily, but some begrudgingly, will allow as an employment perk the freedom for their team members to work from home 2-3 days a week, whatever. So that's going to require still having a central HQ. I don't think that's going anywhere. I think there is a reason why cities are cities. If you take London, for an example, if you have a team of, say, 30 people, they're going to live anywhere from zone 2 out to the home counties in any compass point direction. And so having a central HQ upon which those team members can converge a couple of days a week, a few days a week for collaboration, culture building and so on, is still going to be a necessity. but the nature of how that kind of space is acquired and consumed by businesses is going to change. The products or services available to service that demand have existed for a long time. They used to be called serviced offices, then it was co-working, now it's just flex space. But the demand for those is going to rise. But I think one of the things that's going to be most key to this is that if you are a business owner and you have an office space that you're paying for 24/7, yes, you may have made it smaller. It's going to be less about desks, more about collaboration space, Zoom booths, breakout spaces and so on. But you're allowing your team members the freedom to work from home pretty much whenever you want. Whilst giving them the flexibility to work from home, you're going to have to give them a reason to come into the office. So now I think what we as consumers are going to expect and demand from our workspace is going to change. A lot of businesses and landlords are going to have to up their game. So it's no longer just about a desk with storage and a couple of meeting rooms. It's going to be about wellness, hospitality, relaxation. It's going to be about aesthetics, variety of space as well, because employers and landlords are now going to be competing with the comforts of the home. So going forward, I think most businesses are going to have to create a better than home experience for their team members if their team members are going to brave the commute to come in.
Thanks for watching this week's video. We hope you found it useful. To get in touch with this week's guest, you can find their details in the video description below. And don't forget to give them a like. In the meantime, be sure to subscribe to our channel for more videos from other business owners sharing their expertise and top tips. See you soon!